You're listening to Weather with Enthusiasm. Sunday, August 21st. A hurricane drought, says the Washington Post. The Washington Post has pointed out in their amazing weather articles that they come up with, not necessarily every day, but their love for weather, called the weather gang over there. The love for weather is contagious. Their passion in the wording, and also they are informative of a lot of different things going on. This was mentioned in the previous podcast, but it was not mentioned first. I want to mention this first. It's very important here. We have a 317-day hurricane drought, which is taking place in the Atlantic Ocean. That's as of yesterday. This is basically a media-friendly way of taking a very pleasant situation and turning it into headlines. Pleasant weather, 317 days without any danger from hurricanes. But it's a hurricane drought. Is there any significance to that? I don't know if there's any significance to it, but forecasters were forecasting an above normal hurricane season. The hurricane season is not over yet. And, Mother Nature, if you want to call it Mother Nature, whatever you want to call it, there's many names depending on your background, what you would like to call it. But we have done stuff like this in the past where we were about to break one record and instead we ended up breaking another record, specifically in the year 1999. 1998, actually, December 1998. As of the last week of December, Buffalo, New York, still had no reported snowfall accumulation from both the month of November and December, and they were about to break a record. The first time ever that this was going to happen, just one more week to go, and then they ended up breaking a record for the snowiest December on record. As snow started, a lake effect snow, and it didn't stop. 5 feet of snow accumulated. The opposite record was broken. So we have over here a hurricane season which has been non-existent. It's hard to make headlines out of that, and you may not hear about it on the media. And if you do hear about it, you'll hear about it with words such as drought and stuff like that, which makes it sound like it's something sad or something like that. But really, it's very pleasant. The thing is that the season's not over yet, and anything could happen between now. The peak season happens around September 9th and September 12th into the mid part of September. We have had some other spectacular stuff that have happened this summer, and I think the European heat wave was one of the highlights of the summer. But here in the United States, the 115 degrees in Oklahoma, that was a major highlight this summer. The continuous hundreds in the Mid-South, places like Dallas and in Oklahoma, and St. Louis also had their share of heat that does not occur in a normal summer. Even in St. Louis, which is as hot and humid as, it is hot and humid there, and temperatures are in the hundreds just about every summer. But 105 is something that is not usual over there. The routine over there, what was unique over there, was to go from flooding situations and dew points which reflected that into a drought, back into flooding situations and dew points that reflected it, and going back and forth between the two. However, all of this doesn't hold a candlestick to what's going on in Phoenix, Arizona. Now, there's two possibilities over here. Either we have something historical happening in Phoenix, or there's a complete unawareness of previous years of what the dew points were all about. And here's the thing. This has to be explained well. I don't think I did this on the previous podcast, so let's do it now. The attention when dealing with the Phoenix situation, there's an enormous amount of attention on the precipitation as it deserves. Rain. The area has been under drought. The Southwest Desert, it seems to always be under a drought. The monsoon season starts officially June 15th, much earlier than I ever would have thought it started. I would have thought it started in July. But the National Weather Service does say that although the season starts June 15th, it usually doesn't start until July. Okay, this year it did start June 17th. They're saying it started 2 weeks early, but officially it didn't start early. But it started 2 weeks earlier than usual. The season in the beginning, it started off very strangely. A lack of thunderstorms. The precipitation apparently was occurring from just a normal rain, a rain of blessing, as they say, for the first 2 weeks. Quite amazing. Then it got switched over to what makes the most sense, those convective thunderstorms. And the highlight has been on the rain, and it's been an above normal season for rain, and there's been a lot of talk about that. But there's something that it seems like it's been overlooked. That's what it seems like, and that's the dew points. And what would be very interesting, at least in this podcast, there would be a tremendous interest to find someone from Phoenix, a couple people from Phoenix or so, to see, number one, does the reality match up to what these dew points are showing? With the official recording stations, they're showing dew points in the 70s on a daily basis, even for Sky Harbor International Airport, before sunrise after midnight. Now, granted, most people are sleeping then, so people may not be aware of how humid it is, but there have been plenty of mornings where that stretch of humidity extended well into the mid-morning. And recently, we've been having that stretch of humidity extend through the afternoon, not exactly at Sky Harbor International Airport, but other parts of Phoenix have been having not necessarily 70-degree dew points, but dew points in the mid and even upper 60s, still very humid stuff. Upper 60s is, AccuWeather defines upper 60s, they say that's very humid. Okay, I would say 72 is very humid, but upper 60s is 20 degrees Celsius. It's probably the cutoff. 20 degrees Celsius, 68 degrees Fahrenheit. Maybe you could even be off by a degree, maybe even 67. Very humid. That's been occurring in parts of the Phoenix area during the afternoon. So all this focus on the rain, there's very little focus on dew points, probably because most of the population doesn't even know what dew points are. They're not familiar with it. Even if they know what it is, they're not really familiar with it, and it doesn't have any meaning to them. The thing is that the real headlines, if there are any headlines, anything extreme that's happening in Phoenix, it's not within the rain. The rain, it's going to be within the dew points. In the previous years, it felt to me, see, I'm not an expert on Phoenix, but that's also something that we need over here. Someone who's been analyzing the Phoenix statistics summer after summer, who could say, how does this summer rank to the other summers? But what it's always felt like is that the monsoon season in Phoenix brings an increase in humidity, which it should. The monsoon has been clearly explained by the National Weather Service this year and in other years. This year we've had a high pressure system, and I think most years you have a high pressure system that situates itself to the northeast of Arizona, and it brings an east flow off the Gulf of Mexico right into the Arizona area, bringing what sounds like the type of humidity that would come into the Florida area. Not necessarily the type of humidity, but the type of thunderstorms that would be occurring. It's a heat and humidity is what's created. It's an unstable air mass of heat and humidity, the same type of thing you have in Florida. The only difference is in Phoenix, the dew points in the past, although they go way up, they generally seem to remain around 60, even below 60. They don't seem to officially make it into the humid category. Perhaps after midnight, dew points maybe make it into the low 60s. I remember days where dew points were in the mid 60s. Every now and then, you could check it. You go into Yuma, Arizona, you have dew points in the mid 70s every now and then. And meteorologist Tom Skilling has been reporting that in recent years, dew points occasionally have even been approaching 70 degrees, which is attributed to the increase of swimming pools in the city. So we have the swimming pools, which is causing a climatological change in humidity, which also brings down the temperature. This year, either there's more of an awareness of what the dew points are in reality in Phoenix, or this year is an exception. the dew points have been in the 70s. Whatever it is, the dew points have been in the 70s on a daily basis during the hardest hit parts of the summer from the monsoon season, which has been much of the summer. We are seeing dew points in the 70s, which starts after midnight. People are sleeping during this time and ends probably a little bit before sunrise. But the humidity continues throughout the day, and even in the afternoon. The best case scenario is that the air dries out to the extent that there basically is no heat index. But usually there still tends to be enough humidity to produce even a slight heat index in the afternoon for Sky Harbor International Airport. Other places in Phoenix, especially recently, have been seeing very significant heat indices in the afternoon. The word humid is not even used. It's not an adjective which is used by the computerized system of the National Weather Service. That's not one of the words used as of yet. Hot and humid. On the East Coast, the words hazy, hot, and humid, they go together. Those are the three H's. In the Midwest, the word hazy is usually not used. It's just hot and humid. In Phoenix, it's just hot or very hot, something like that. The word humid isn't used, hasn't really been used yet. It's part of an official system. The system doesn't go by the moods of the meteorologists, whatever words they feel like saying. There's an actual system which is done. It's a robot voice on the weather radio, and that word humid, even the heat index, is not reported there. But if this continues, one would think that that's going to have to change. There's going to have to be a mention of humidity in Phoenix, and it's just amazing. It's just absolutely amazing to have a city, a National Weather Service for a city, forecasts for a city which is receiving intense humidity, especially after midnight, and yet the word humid is not one of the adjectives. It's like almost not an option. They're not able to use it. I don't know, maybe there was a vote or something on what words you could use, what words you can't use, but it's not even put into the forecast to my knowledge. And yet we have dew points which are in the 70s. So we're left with some major questions. It's mysterious. Major stuff which requires an explanation what exactly is going on there. If it truly is as humid as these dew points are saying it is, then how could a forecast not include the word humid? How could that be? That's the basics. How could it not need? There's so much focus on the rain. Okay, so then we go the other direction. Okay, maybe it's not humid, but then you have to figure out, how could it possibly not be humid if the dew points are so high? Is that possible? Is there a way to explain high dew points? Is that possible? Dew points is a measurement of humidity in the air. Is there a way? Is there something in Phoenix which interferes with the feeling of humid? There must be a reason why the National Weather Service is not using the word humid to describe the situation. There has to be a reason, and no one's talking about these dew points, but the dew points are phenomenal stuff. It's exactly the same thing as the 115 degrees coming to Oklahoma. As phenomenal as that was Phoenix, Arizona coming to Oklahoma for the summer. What we have now is Oklahoma is going to Phoenix for the summer. It's exactly the opposite, and the Oklahoma thing made headlines. The Phoenix thing is also making headlines, but it's making headlines for a completely different reason. So we have very little focus on the dew point situation, and my hope is that at some point it would be a dream if the Washington Post can do this, because if they can just get to this, they have all the info and excellent communication, very efficient, excellent communication in the way they write in the newspaper. Anyone, if there could be some type of an explanation to know what is going on over here, that's something that it's really something which is it continues, the story there continues. It's not just a freak occurrence, or it's been going on for weeks and weeks. The humidity seems to only be intensifying. I'm only seeing the numbers. According to the numbers, the humidity is intensifying. I know here in Chicago, the numbers do not match up to reality. For example, you'll have a high temperature today, 95. You call someone up in Chicago, they say it's 75 because it was only 95 for an hour. By 1 o'clock, by 2 o'clock, a lake went over and took over the city. That's the story for Phoenix. We have lots to investigate. Meanwhile, Northwest Pacific heat wave continues. The hot air that, it's a weaker version of hot air, tells us. The National Weather Service informs us of that. But in terms of that being translated to the surface, it's very difficult to detect. It's not even possible to detect because it remains in the hundreds over there. So it's very hot over there. And the heat is going to get worse. The heat will get worse later on in the week. We're actually expecting record heat in Seattle, Washington later in the week. Thank you for listening. I wish everyone a wonderful night. Have a great week. This podcast can be found on many platforms, including Spreaker, Google Podcasts, Amazon, Apple, and many, many others. Spotify. Just Google Weather with Enthusiasm, and they're all going to come up.